The bird dog for people with low back pain and who want to develop core strength, stability and endurance is a very important exercise, and we're going to be talking about why it's important, because I see so many times people using it incorrectly, people performing it incorrectly, and we're going to talk about why it's important, and we'll talk about some of those technique faults that people have as they go through. It's an important exercise because it's essentially doing three things. It's helping you develop what I describe as joint awareness, and I'll describe that in a second. And then the other two, it's a high stability exercise, so it's developing good quality stability, and it's a low compression exercise. So it's not putting a huge amount of compression or stress around the spine. So number one is joint awareness. So it's able to build good quality joint awareness. Now, what does that mean? If you go to the technical term, they might talk about proprioception, but I just want to keep it simple, keep it in as lay terms as I can. We're talking about joint awareness. Where is your body and what is it doing? So with regards to very simple joint awareness, if we were to do a bicep curl, it's that. The elbow stays still and we're bending our elbow. So that's very simple for us to perform. Now, some people need that, and some people are beyond that. So for people that are new to exercise, they may just need very simple exercises. But when it comes to the bird dog, it's multi-joint. It's hip, it's shoulder, it's elbow, it's knee. We've also got to think about the rotation of the hip, the weight shift of the hip, the rotation of the torso and the shoulders. So there's a lot that we need to think about. So when we come down and do it, some of the technique flaws would be this type of movement. So coming up too high, or not coming up quite high enough and we've got a rounded spine. Or when we lift, we sort of shift our weight, or we rotate our hip, or something like that. So you've got all those different technique flaws. So what it helps us do is, from a very simple perspective, if we go back to that bicep curl, it's a very simple, it's just one joint moving. So that's all we need to think about. But when it comes to the bird dog, we've got multiple joints. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got then the rotation of the hip as well. So that could be 5 and 6 with the weight shift. So there's a lot to think about. We can then layer the muscles on top of it. So what we need to be doing is just coming into this position. So we've got that neutral posture. We've got a straight line going from the heel, the hip, up to the shoulder, and the head's in line as well, because some people will cock their head up and look up, but we want to keep all that in line. So we can then hold. We can also add this movement to it. So what we're trying to do is, from the side, we're trying to keep that straight line. From the front view, what we're trying to do is also keep nice sort of straight all the way down the body. So what we're not doing is the weight shift, which would look something like that, and then they come the other side and it sort of looks something like that, or then you've got the rotation, which is kind of this sort of position. So what it's able to do is it develops that, it builds that, what is called an engram or a motor program in the brain to be able to hold that. And when you hold that, then the muscles start reacting more effectively, which is what we're going to talk about next when we look at the thoracic extensors, the lats and the hip muscles. So number 2, it's high stability. So we've got hip, shoulder and spine stability that we're getting from it. So from a very simple perspective, when I come down into this position, the stability of this hip, because it's got to be able to hold this in position, stability of that shoulder to again hold the shoulder in position, and the stability of the spine, so I'm not rotating, moving or adding any unnecessary stress to the spine. So we've got just that basic stability to it. What we've also got are the thoracic extensors. Now the thoracic extensors, essentially, they're covering, most of the muscle is covering the rib cage, and then most of the tendon is down in this lower back. Now these are the most effective muscles for extending and stabilizing the lower back, for the very simple reason is they've got what could be described as a long moment arm. Now, all that is doing is, if you've got a short moment arm and you're trying to hold on to something with a short handle, it's much harder. But when you've got a long handle and you're holding on to it, so you're holding on sort of here and here, it's much easier to hold on to. But when you're holding here and here, it's much harder. So what we're basically talking about with this, so if I lift my right arm, so as soon as I come into this position, those muscles are engaging, because as soon as I lift my arm, those muscles have to work to be able to hold all of that in position. So again, I go into this position and then I come down and I swap positions. So what we've got is these muscles with long moment arms switching on, switching off as we go into the different positions. And that is a much more effective way of stabilizing the lower back, rather than doing back extensions, which is going to cause problems around the spine, because what you're then doing is you're then engaging the lumbar extensors, which are the ones with the short moment arms, which are going to be very hard to sort of hold it into position, rather than if we're holding like so with the thoracic extensors. The next muscles that come with that is the latissimus dorsi. So again, with regards to the lumbar extensors, it sits over the top of it. The thoracic extensors, they sit over the top. So it basically goes from sort of this position here, just at the bottom of the rib cage, all the way across the back and into the back of the arm. So again, we can engage the lats by doing something very specific. So we come down into this position. So when I lift my arm, I'm not just lifting my arm and just letting it sort of wave around. What I want to do is set the shoulder. So if you look at it from here, is I set the shoulder down into my rib cage. That engages the lats. That again, with a very long moment arm across the whole of the back, gives stability to the lower back. So the thoracic extensors and the latissimus dorsi are giving great stability to the area around the spine, although they aren't spinal extensors, which is what everyone goes for. And we're going to talk about those again in a second. So we've got the lats. So again, if I push that shoulder down, again, if I push this shoulder down, I engage the lats. So I'm able to hold that whole upper body in place, stabilizing the lower back. Third set of muscls are the glutes. So we've got glute, obviously glute max is the big one, but mainly glute medius, glute minimus. So again, if we can get all of those muscles working properly, so when I come into this position, again, I don't just sort of let my leg go floppy here. What I want to do is get the leg straight, so I've got activation through glute max. With regards to this side, glute medius and glute minimus are holding me in a nice stable position. So what I've got is lats working, thoracic extensors working, glute max, glute medius, glute minimus all working to stabilize, as we've talked about, the shoulder, the spine and the hips. Part 3 is low compression. So we've talked about joint awareness, we've talked about high stability, and we're now going to talk about low compression. So this back extension machine is something that I don't use for back extensions. I use it for something different. So I hopefully that will answer that question of why have you got a back extension machine. I don't use it for back extensions, but if we were to use it for back extensions, this is the kind of thing that we would be doing. So we'd be coming into this position, we'd be coming down, and then we'd be lifting up. So that's performing a few things around the lower back. Because you've got both sides of the spine working, that creates much higher compression around the spine. And by compression, what I mean is, imagine I've got a sponge in between my hands and I'm squeezing it around it like that. That's what compression would be described as. So when I go into that position, that would be a high compression, and it has been recorded. If you go and look at low back disorder where it has been measured, it can be up to 6,000 newtons of compression. When we go into the bird dog, because with the bird dog we're only lifting one side, so we're only lifting this side, or we've only got this side, again the compression is much lower, so it's essentially half. It's around 3,000 newtons of compression. So when we talk about lower back pain, if compression is a problem, then we're alleviating that by using the bird dog, because we're reducing the compression around the spine. Rather than 6,000, we're at 3,000. If it comes to core training, it's perfect because it's got joint awareness, it's stabilising multiple joints, and also for people with back pain, once they're beyond their pain and they're starting to use the bird dog as an exercise, it can start rebuilding the torso into a place where they are at a much reduced risk of injury or re-injury, as it were. And then it then dovetails and then moves into what would be core strengthening, core stabilizing type of exercise when we go into the core training side of it. But again, it's perfect for both. It just needs to be used and done and performed in the right way. So to quickly summarize, we've talked about the importance of the bird dog for people with lower back pain and people into core training. Why is it so important? Because it gives us good quality joint awareness. We're thinking about multiple joints and multiple muscles at any one time, and we've got lots of things to think about. What is the position of my hip? What's the position of my knee? What's the position of my leg and foot? What's the position of my hips side to side? What's the position of my shoulders side to side? Is my head cocked up? Is my head cocked down? Is my arm in position? Is my elbow straight? Is my fist clenched? So on and so forth. So there's lots of bits to think about whilst we're doing it, and that's what I would describe as good quality joint awareness, good quality proprioception if you want the technical term. Number two is its high stability, because it goes through the shoulder, the spine, and the opposing hip. So we get the thoracic extensors engaged, we get the lats engaged, and we get the gluteal group engaged. And then number three, the final one, it's low compression, because when we go on to a low back type of apparatus back there, or even if we just do back extensions off the floor, because we engage both sides, you get much more compression around the spine, which is creating more stress to the spine, so we can reduce that and half it with the bird dog. So hopefully that's been helpful. Hopefully it's given you a better idea of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and you can use it more effectively if you're overcoming lower back pain or if you're developing core strength, stability, endurance. So many thanks for watching. I'll speak to you in the next tutorial.